The train was supposed to take her home in less than 2 hours. Instead, one exhausted nap carried her hundreds of miles in the wrong direction, and when she opened her eyes beneath the warm afternoon sunlight, the first face she saw belonged to a stranger whose quiet kindness would heal wounds she had carried for years. Neither of them boarded that train expecting their lives to change forever, but sometimes the greatest miracles arrive after the biggest mistakes. If you believe kindness can change a life, if you believe in forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing emotional stories that remind us the world is still filled with good people. At 29, Meredith Collins had become an expert at pretending everything was fine. She smiled through difficult meetings, comforted friends through their struggles, and called her mother every Sunday with cheerful stories that carefully avoided the truth. Very few people knew that her engagement had ended only 3 months earlier after she discovered the man she trusted had secretly been planning an entirely different future. The apartment they had decorated together no longer felt like home, every familiar street carried painful memories, and even ordinary mornings felt heavy. When her company finally approved a week's vacation, she decided to visit her elderly aunt in a quiet lakeside town, hoping a change of scenery would quiet the storm inside her heart. The train station buzzed with the energy of a beautiful afternoon. Families hurried toward platforms carrying picnic baskets, children laughed while chasing pigeons across the polished floor, musicians played cheerful melodies near the entrance, and travelers studied departure boards with coffee cups warming their hands. Meredith arrived early, settled beside the window, and watched the city slowly disappear as the train rolled through green countryside. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to close her eyes. She had barely slept in weeks. The gentle rhythm of the train, the warmth of the afternoon sun, and the quiet exhaustion that had built inside her for so long finally overcame her. She fell deeply asleep. When she finally opened her eyes, bright sunlight still poured through the windows, but everything outside looked unfamiliar. The train was nearly empty. Fields stretched farther than she remembered. The station signs carried names she had never seen before. Her heart began pounding. She rushed to the conductor, only to discover she had slept through her stop, several additional stations, and nearly the entire route. The train had already reached its final destination. Meredith stood frozen on the platform, overwhelmed by embarrassment and panic. Her phone battery had died. The next return train wouldn't leave until later that afternoon. She knew absolutely no one in the small countryside town where she had accidentally arrived. As she tried to steady her breathing, she noticed someone quietly approaching. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't staring. He simply carried an old leather satchel and the calm expression of someone who believed every problem deserved patience before panic. His name was Rowan Fletcher. He worked as the local librarian and volunteered several afternoons each week helping travelers who found themselves stranded after missed connections or unexpected delays. Years earlier, his younger sister had become lost during a family trip after boarding the wrong train. Complete strangers had cared for her until their parents arrived. Since then, Rowan had promised himself he would always become that stranger whenever someone else needed one. After hearing Meredith explain what had happened, he smiled gently and assured her that mistakes happened more often than people realized. Instead of offering sympathy alone, he quietly began solving problems. He found a charging cable for her phone inside the station office. He contacted customer service to confirm her return reservation. He discovered there were still several hours before her train departed. Then he offered to show her around the little town instead of letting her spend the entire afternoon worrying inside the station. Meredith hesitated. Accepting help from strangers had become difficult after everything she had experienced. Still, something about Rowan felt different. There was no pressure. No expectation. Only genuine kindness. She accepted. The town seemed almost untouched by time. Flower baskets decorated every storefront. Elderly neighbors greeted one another by name. Fresh bread drifted from a family bakery where recipes had been passed down for generations. The lake shimmered beneath clear afternoon skies while children skipped stones along its peaceful shoreline. Rowan explained that he had grown up there and never wanted to leave. Many people believed success always meant moving somewhere bigger. He believed success meant building a life where people knew your heart before they knew your job title. Those words stayed with Meredith. For years, she had measured happiness through promotions, expensive apartments, and carefully planned futures. Yet none of those things had protected her from heartbreak. As they walked through the town square, they encountered several people Rowan quietly helped without seeking recognition. He carried groceries for an elderly widower. He repaired a loose bicycle chain for a teenager. He delivered library books to a woman recovering from surgery. Every act seemed completely ordinary to him. To Meredith, they felt extraordinary. She slowly realized kindness wasn't something Rowan occasionally practiced. It was simply who he was. During lunch at a small cafe overlooking the lake, Meredith finally admitted the real reason she looked so tired. She confessed that she no longer trusted her own judgment. After her broken engagement, she questioned every decision she had ever made. She feared she had wasted years loving someone who never truly loved her. She worried she might never feel safe opening her heart again. Rowan listened without interrupting. He never rushed to offer advice. When she finished, he quietly shared something about himself. Several years earlier, he had been engaged as well. Only weeks before the wedding, his fiancée chose a different path. For months he blamed himself. He convinced himself he wasn't successful enough, interesting enough, ambitious enough. Eventually he discovered something that changed everything. The wrong people often leave us feeling unworthy, while the right people remind us of the value we already had. Healing didn't begin the day his heart stopped hurting. Healing began the day he stopped believing the pain defined him. Meredith felt tears forming despite herself. Nobody had ever explained heartbreak that way. The afternoon continued unfolding like a gift neither of them expected. They visited the old library where Rowan had spent years creating reading programs for children. Meredith helped organize donated books while dozens of young readers excitedly searched for new adventures on the shelves. Watching Rowan encourage every child with patience and genuine joy awakened something inside her. She remembered the version of herself who once dreamed of making the world brighter instead of merely surviving it. Later they walked through an annual community fair held beside the river. Local artists displayed handmade paintings, musicians performed cheerful melodies, and volunteers raised money for families facing medical hardships. When one volunteer accidentally dropped an entire donation box across the sidewalk, dozens of people immediately stopped to help collect every coin. Nobody argued. Nobody walked away. Everyone simply helped. Meredith quietly smiled. She hadn't realized how desperately she needed to witness ordinary goodness. Just as they prepared to return to the station, Rowan received an unexpected phone call. His elderly father had stumbled while working in the garden and needed someone to drive him to a nearby medical clinic for a precautionary examination. Without hesitation, Rowan apologized to Meredith for changing plans. Before he could finish, Meredith offered to accompany them. At the clinic, Rowan's father, Graham Fletcher, turned out to be perfectly fine after a minor examination. While waiting, Meredith noticed several elderly patients struggling with paperwork. She naturally began helping them complete forms, organize appointments, and contact family members. Rowan watched quietly from across the waiting room. He wasn't impressed because she helped. He was moved because she smiled while doing it. It was the first genuine smile he had seen on her face all afternoon. Sometimes healing begins the moment we stop focusing on our own brokenness and begin easing someone else's burden. By the time they returned to the station, Meredith almost wished the train would arrive late. For the first time in months, she didn't feel trapped by sadness. She felt hopeful. Before boarding, Rowan handed her a small library bookmark decorated with watercolor paintings of the town's lake. On the back he had written only one sentence. "Sometimes the wrong destination leads us exactly where we were meant to go." Meredith tucked it carefully into her wallet. Back home, life slowly began changing. Instead of returning to old routines, she started volunteering every weekend at a literacy program for children. She spent less time mourning the future she had lost and more time building a meaningful present. Months passed. Letters traveled regularly between Meredith and Rowan. They shared stories about books, community projects, family celebrations, and small victories that rarely appeared on social media but mattered deeply in real life. Their friendship grew steadily because it wasn't built on excitement alone. It was built on honesty. Nearly a year later, Meredith returned to the same countryside town intentionally. This time she didn't miss her stop. She arrived carrying donated books collected through a citywide fundraiser she had organized with friends inspired by Rowan's community work. The little library received more than 2,000 books that afternoon. Children filled every corner laughing, reading, and imagining brighter futures. Watching them, Meredith realized her accidental train ride had quietly redirected her own life. What once seemed like an embarrassing mistake had become the beginning of her greatest blessing. As seasons continued changing, Meredith and Rowan worked together on literacy projects connecting urban schools with rural libraries. Their shared purpose strengthened a relationship founded on mutual respect, compassion, and patience. Eventually they married beneath clear afternoon skies beside the same peaceful lake where they had first shared lunch as strangers. There were no extravagant decorations. No celebrity guests. Only family, friends, grateful children from the library, and neighbors whose lives had been touched by simple acts of kindness. Meredith often laughed whenever someone asked how they first met. The answer always sounded too unbelievable to invent. She simply fell asleep. Everything else awakened. Years later, travelers visiting the little library often noticed a framed bookmark displayed near the entrance. Beneath it appeared the sentence that had quietly transformed 2 lives. "Sometimes the wrong destination leads us exactly where we were meant to go." Visitors smiled before continuing their journeys, never realizing those words had once rescued 2 hearts that believed happiness had passed them by forever. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever made a mistake that unexpectedly became one of the greatest blessings in your life? Leave a meaningful comment below because your experience might encourage someone who feels lost today to keep believing that better days are still ahead. Meredith eventually understood that healing doesn't always arrive through carefully planned moments. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a missed stop, an unexpected stranger, a simple afternoon, or one act of kindness that reminds us the world still holds people capable of changing our lives without asking for anything in return. The train she boarded by mistake never took her where she intended to go, but it carried her exactly where her heart needed to be. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that even life's unexpected detours can become the very roads that lead us toward hope, healing, lasting love, and the beautiful future we never imagined was waiting just beyond the next stop.